Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I am Lorna Virgili, his Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today are Dr. James Bridgers, who is the Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Nina Ashford, the Chief of Public Health Services, Dr. Earl Stoddard and Luisa Cardona, both Assistant Chief Administrative Officers, and our guests this morning are Monica Martin, Behavioral Health and Crisis Services Chief for the Department of Health and Human Services, Cameron Pony Dexter, Program Coordinator for the Ambassador Program, Be the One, and Sara Insasario. She's a student at Einstein High School and also a Be the One Ambassador. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, floor is yours.
Thank you all, and thank everybody for joining us again today. July is National Minority Health Awareness Month, and making it a good time to highlight a program developed in Montgomery County to help other teens deal with mental health issues. The Be the One Ambassador Program is dedicated to preventing suicide and substance misuse among teenagers. It's also there to help with mental health concerns. The program operates on the belief that youth-led efforts are uniquely powerful because students are uniquely connected to their peers and understand the contemporary challenges they face. The program partners in Montgomery County Public High Schools and students representing 17 schools this last year. It empowers students to take action through two distinct levels of involvement. The first level is social media advocacy, and that ambassadors use their digital platforms to share animated posters and educational content designed to reduce stigma and connect peers to vital resources. The second level is community leadership, and here students lead more intensive activities such as organizing group mindfulness sessions, creating self-soothing kits, hosting educational movie screenings, or bringing in professional speakers to raise awareness within their schools. To support those facing emotional challenges, the program promotes 5 practical steps to help someone who may be facing a mental health crisis. Those steps are: ask, keep them safe, be there, assist in making connections, and follow up. Today, I'm pleased to have 3 guests who will share more about the program. Please welcome Monica Martin, who serves as the Chief of Behavioral Health and Crisis Services in our Department of Health and Human Services. She's joined today by Sara Insasario, he's student at Einstein High School, my alma mater, and Cameron Poindexter, Program Administrator for the Be the One Youth Ambassador Program. Thank you all for being here, and let's start with Monica, then we'll hear from Sara and Cameron.
Good morning, Mr. County Executive. Thank you so much for having me on today and our fellow guests. I just wanted to share a little bit of information about screen time and its connection to mental health and teen suicide. It's been a hot topic and something that we have gained additional research and insight into. One is that, as many of us already know at this point, excessive screen time is consistently linked to poor mental health in teens. Research shows strong associations between high screen exposure. We're talking, more than 3 hours a day, especially via smartphones and on social media use, and the increased risk of depression, anxiety, and really just a reduction in overall well-being. Among teens, girls experience particularly heightened risks tied to social media use. In addition, there's clear associations between high screen time and suicidal ideation and planning. So high school students that use digital devices more than 4 hours a day, they show nearly double the odds of suicidal ideation and suicide planning, even after adjusting for sleep and other demographic factors. At this point, we have post-COVID national data that confirms that there's an elevated risk of suicidal ideation, planning, and attempts in teens with more than 5 hours a day of screen time. And of course, depression and cyberbullying contribute significantly to these findings. Having shared some of that information, it's important to recognize that addictive patterns, more so than overall hours of use, drive the highest suicide risk. So youth that have the inability to stop using, youth that seem to go through withdrawal when not using, and those who use screen time as an escape that truly substitutes any other healthy coping strategy, those youth face roughly double the risk of suicidal behaviors. Again, even with the total amount of time is not necessarily predictive. Finally, it's really important to recognize that long-term cumulative digital exposure can increase the risk of suicide attempts later in adulthood. So consistently high teen screen use is associated with later self-harm and also poor cognitive outcomes. So we got to keep in mind those long-term impacts as well. But the good news is that parental monitoring dramatically reduces risk. Strong parental relationships we know are key, and they cut the risk of poor mental health and suicidal ideation among high frequency social media users from as much as cutting it down from 22% down to 2%. And then, of course, what's even more exciting is when teens support each other in saying no to screen time and helping each other participate in alternative activities and healthy coping strategies and spread awareness that can save lives. So that's why I'm so excited to have Sarah and Cameron here to share with us more about the Be the One program. I'm going to hand it over to Sarah, who's going to share about her experience in the program and some messages that she wants to make sure are heard by the community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Incesadio. I'm a rising senior at Albert Einstein High School. So I'm very happy to be here today. And the Be the One program is a very important program that I would hope more high schoolers my age would like to indulge themselves in and be a part of, because it's very educational and aids me in learning more about what I can do to help my peers regarding mental health. As I mentioned earlier, I am a rising senior, meaning I'm class of 27, and the class of 2027 had their fifth grade cut off due to quarantine. So we went into quarantine on March 13th, fifth grade. And as fifth graders, initially, we were very excited about middle school. The idea of having lockers, going up a level in a sense of gaining some minor independence in our school days. But as everyone knows, quarantine went on for much longer than expected. And as fifth grade girls, this was during the time of puberty, hormones, and all types of changes in our body, along with our mentality. And the lack of socializing tied into the changes in our bodies and led to a lot of body image issues and insecurities. I can definitely speak for myself as someone who has gained a lot of weight during quarantine, or even for those who lost a significant amount. Our minds were starting to find things wrong with ourselves, and our bodies were exaggerating it. And it made our insecurities amplify and causing most of us to isolate ourselves, along with isolating our emotions and choosing overall just to not speak about how we're feeling on the outside with other people. Now, tying that in with technology in our phones, it ultimately just got worse because quarantine, there was a high increase in the use of technology and social media. It has been proven that body image has a positive correlation with social media, meaning that there is a connection between the two. So the negative side of that is that users frequently compare themselves to idealized or heavily edited or filtered photos, which makes their own bodies feel inferior, especially considering we're not taking into account how much social media isn't necessarily the true reality. During quarantine, content like Thinspiration or diet culture videos rapidly surfaced, especially for young users like ourselves during quarantine. It ultimately just fed into our insecurities. Many studies highlighted that this kind of social comparison on apps like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, it's often more damaging than actual in-person comparisons. Seeing someone in real life and comparing yourself to them is less harmful than seeing someone online and comparing yourself to that person, considering the fact that we don't take into account how social media paints almost a false narrative on those posting themselves. And ultimately, that just leads to a risk of higher disordered eating. However, there are many good aspects of social media, especially recently. Not sure about during quarantine, but recently now there is more exposure to body positive content that feature diverse body types, shapes, and sizes. And ultimately, it can improve mood and boost body appreciation. For people seeking support about their body, some online spaces do offer a safe, judgment free zone to connect with others facing similar struggles or body image issues or body dysmorphia. Mostly something that we've come to appreciate now is how accounts celebrate traits, talents, and health outside of physical appearance, highlighting that your body doesn't represent you. It's not the first thing that people should look at and consider when making their judgment about you. And this encourages a healthier overall relationship with someone's body, because it reminds them that, hey, how I look on the outside does not reflect or represent how I look on the inside. So ultimately, my body, my shape, my size should not be a big factor in what people think of me. All in all, social media has its negative and positive effects on body image and mental health, but it's important to understand that regarding younger minds, these effects can be expected to be more significant than for those whose minds have mostly matured. So people in middle school or even high school, just minors in general, the effects of social media can be expected to amplify more than, let's say, college students or people in their middle ages. And also, quarantine's contributions to modern day screen time. They ultimately normalize digital reliance, meaning that socializing, doing work, like being on Zoom and entertainment, quarantine has definitely shifted all those things to being online instead of being in person or face to face. So, an increase in screen time is directly linked to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and poor sleep quality, which all fall under the major topic of mental health. And so, to be more specific, doom scrolling, which is a term many have used lightly, including myself. I do fall guilty for using that term with my peers, saying, oh, yeah, I've been just doom scrolling instead of doing my work. But it's actually more serious than many people consider. It's linked to an increased risk of depressive symptoms, loneliness, sleep disruption, and anxiety, because taking in that information or comparing yourself to random people we see online that quickly and for that lengthy amount of time, it messes up our attention span, meaning it fragments it. So it ultimately makes us less likely to watch a video longer for 1 minute. Even in the first 3 seconds of a video, if it doesn't automatically catch our attention, we scroll to the next. And that is something that is a very negative effect of social media or TikTok, Instagram in general, the doom scrolling that comes into place with the usage of those apps. So doom scrolling does increase stress, and it ultimately does take time away from face-to-face interactions and connections. So if we want to reduce our screen time, there are many different strategies that we can use to do that. For example, we can establish tech-free zones, meaning obviously no technology in those areas. You can establish this maybe in your bedroom, kitchen, or most importantly, the bathroom, because it is common knowledge that everyone does doom scroll on the toilet. So that is definitely a tech-free zone that should be established. We could also review our built-in screen time reports and use our app limits or blockers to cap or prevent our daily usage from increasing. So think about what apps you want to use less. Even set a time limit on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Those are all apps that do allow you to limit yourself and your time that you spend on that app, to allow your screen time reports to lessen and to cap that daily usage. Also, you can do your best to avoid technology about an hour before bedtime, because it does allow your sleep cycle to improve, as well as your focus, because again, the usage of your phone, social media, doom scrolling, it does damage your attention span a bit. So avoiding technology before bedtime, because bedtime is also another very common time that people doom scroll. It can allow your focus to improve your sleep cycle, and allow you to get the rest that you need necessary to better your mental health in general. Also, to limit your screen usage. Try to indulge in other hobbies like yoga, painting, hanging out with friends, just anything except being on that phone. And if you have the urge to just be on your phone, just scroll on Instagram or TikTok, try to go outside, have a conversation with a stranger, or maybe go outside, drive around, listen to music. Just limit your screen time and technology and find other strategies to satisfy yourself and your brain, and to allow your brain to relax and desensitize itself from being so used to being on a phone or on a computer or looking at your screen. Because, again, as mentioned earlier, many people do have work, have homework, or other things that they're so used to doing online because of how quarantine shifted almost everything to being done online and on a screen. But ultimately, if you truly want to reduce your screen time, while all these strategies are very helpful, it's necessary to know that it takes discipline and it takes motivation. If you truly are not motivated or disciplined enough to reduce your screen time and take these actions to help yourself and your mental health, then it won't work. You won't be able to reduce your screen time. You have to truly want it, and you have to truly want to see the change in yourself and relax your brain and better your mental health in general. So thank you so much for the time. I'm going to pass it on to Miss Cameron. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good morning. My name is Cameron Pondexter. Thank you for having us today. I'm the program administrator for the Be the One Youth Ambassador program. So I work directly with middle and high school students across Montgomery County to build their skills as peer leaders on substance use prevention, mental health awareness, and suicide prevention. So I do help ambassadors do outreach within the community. We participate in wellness events, Narcan, opioid overdose education, and other prevention, advocacy, and community outreach events. Through the Be the One Youth Ambassador program, we do intentionally recruit and support ambassadors from across Montgomery County within diverse communities. So, Be the One is a movement to empower young people to use their voices on topics that impact them. This program was initially started to address suicide prevention, but it has grown to address substance use and misuse as well as overall mental wellness. Be the One seeks to grow its members by providing leadership opportunities, advocacy opportunities, in addition to opportunities for community service. So in the past year, 17 different schools were represented, ensuring that both public schools and private schools do reach their prevention messages. The program successfully expanded its pipeline to middle school students. So we were starting as only high school students, and this year we did recruit more middle school students. Since 2022, we have personally trained over 700 of our peers in life-saving overdose response, and our ambassadors have collectively contributed over 2,000 student service learning hours to our community through wellness events and advocacy. So we have participated in things like We Care making bags, Narcan kit assembling, lead presentation, and Summer of Peace events. Our social media campaigns have generated over 1 million impressions, meeting youth where they are to provide actionable mental health steps, which are ask, keep them safe, be there, help them connect, and follow up. Please follow us on our social media. We can be found on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at BeTheOne_NC. We're intentional about recruiting ambassadors who reflect the diversity of Montgomery County because peer-led conversations are different when they come from someone who understands your culture and your family dynamics. So our ambassadors have briefly discussed how different cultures have different customs that can affect mental health. What gets labeled as tradition at home can sometimes make it harder for a kid to speak up. So breaking that cycle is tough in some cultures because no one wants to come across as disrespectful to their family. In the Black community especially, mental health doesn't have the best history of being taken seriously. Kids may be struggling and the response is still to kind of just brush it off. But we are proud of the impact our ambassadors have made, and we're excited to continue growing a generation of young leaders who are creating positive change in their schools and communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Members of the media, let's open it up for questions regarding teen mental health and Be the One program. Kate Ryan, I see your hand up, WTOP. Go ahead, Kate.
Thank you so much. Sarah, I'll start with you. I'm a former teacher myself, and I remember my kids used to tease me about making them take too many notes. But that was in the days before everyone had a Chromebook or a laptop in there at their desk. When you go back to school this fall, do you expect how much of your schoolwork has to be done online? And is that a bit of a problem when you're trying to get kids to break away and, touch grass and get out and talk to each other and interact differently?
So yes, much of our schoolwork is definitely online. I've noticed that, especially because I'm in the IB diploma program at my school. So there's a required curriculum in the program that requires us to write essays that are between 2,000 and 4,000 words, and that is mainly what we're going to be working on when we return back to school. So that portion of our curriculum definitely requires us to be on technology. But ultimately, I have noticed that many of my teachers, like for example, my French teacher, she does give us a lot of paperwork. And I've noticed that teachers often in the beginning of the year do ask students what is their preferred work method and what is their preferred screen time usage on computers and whether or not they like to be on paper or on a computer. Unfortunately, many students just do prefer doing it on a computer. That's obviously very common because they've gotten more used to it. But to prevent that, uh, many teachers do have at least mostly like reading. If they have to read a book and take notes, there's a lot of note taking that is not done on a computer. That is offered by paper. So I do notice that teachers try to incorporate a balance of both to ensure that screen time usage is limited and it's appropriate for our brain, our mental health, and how we're going about on our school day.
Do you find it helps your recall on a test? Like, do you remember those actual physical notes that you've taken a little bit more easily than stuff you may have typed?
In my personal opinion, I do find it easier to memorize things that I physically write down, mostly because I don't know, I feel like it's different for everyone, but me personally, when I physically write down something, it's like, hey, it's coming from my own brain, my eyes, I'm seeing it. Because sometimes on the computer, our brains kind of zone out a bit on what we're doing, so we don't really intake information completely and like to our best extent. So for me personally, I do intake information and memorize information when it's on paper.
Okay, and very quick follow-up, I promise, Lorna. For Cameron and Sarah, are the guys participating as much in this kind of work as you guys are? And I ask that because we hear so much about the manosphere and what that impact is having on 13 and 14-year-old boys, and whether or not they feel comfortable getting up front about some of these issues that they're facing. What are your thoughts? What are your observations?
I can go. So I will say that we have a decent amount of guys in our program. They're not as vocal as the girls when it comes to certain things like this. They do show up to events. They help out, but every once in a while when we do like our mental health check-ins and meetings, of course, most people would just kind of say like, yeah, I'm doing good. I feel like sometimes the girls will go into a little more depth, like I'm stressed about school or like something like maybe around the holidays, might have anxiety, stuff like that. But the guys are kind of always just like, yeah, everything's going good. Sometimes they might insert something about like sports and maybe their sports haven't been doing as well or something like that. But for the most part, they don't really necessarily engage in like the mental health aspect as much.
Got it. And Sarah?
Yeah, to add on a bit on what Ms. Cameron said, I do notice that on our like weekly meetings, the girls are definitely more vocal about their mental health. But in the opposite sense, when we have our in-person events and like when we pack winter we care bags or doing community enrichment or engagement events, the guys are definitely there and participating more in that. I would definitely say I can connect that to probably the stigma of men talking about like their mental health and how like I guess in society men kind of have this, I don't know if it's their ego or something, but they just don't really like to talk about their mental health. They don't really get much vulnerable when it comes to certain topics. So yeah, during our meetings, I definitely noticed that they're just like, oh, it's sports, or oh, school. They're going to be very vague about it, but they don't actually tend to engage in those very sensitive topics as much as the girls do.
Thank you for the very frank talk, and you are wise beyond your years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Members of the media, any other questions regarding this particular topic? All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning. If you need to depart, feel free to do so. If not, you can remain in this media briefing. And Mr. County Executive, let's transition to other topics.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank the ladies for the work they did. I'm really impressed with the students. Monica, of course, too, but it's really impressive what the students had to say. And I'm grateful that you all participated today. So thank you for doing that. Be the One Org is the initiative's website, and there's a lot more information there. And please remember that there is always help available through the 988 helpline, whether by phone, text, or chat. And locally, our crisis center is available 24/7 without an appointment, and that can be reached by calling 240-777-4000. Once again, that's 240-777-4000. Now moving on to heavier topics. Our community shares in the grief over the killings by ICE agents of Juan Sebastian Duran Guerrero in Biddeford, Maine, and Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston, Texas. They were loving fathers and husbands. They were people who worked, built lives, and contributed to their communities, and their families are grieving. And that grief deserves to be met with truth and accountability, not spin. Duran Guerrero was 26, a father from Colombia, legally authorized to work in the United States. His partner watched ICE agents shoot him in front of their home and their 3-year-old daughter. Salgado Araujo was a self-made businessman from Mexico who worked in construction, raised 3 children, and spent years working toward legal status. Neither man was the intended target of ICE agents. While the Trump administration claims to be going after the worst of the worst, these immigration agents continue to target the wrong people. At this point, we can see a very clear pattern from this administration. We're still waiting for justice for Renee Good and Alex Preddy, both American citizens who were murdered by federal agents earlier this year for voicing their frustration with what they were witnessing around Minneapolis. In case after case, no agent has faced real consequences. At least 10 people have been killed during federal immigration operations since this administration's deportation campaign began. Nearly 50 have died in ICE custody. These are not coincidences, and they are predictable results of an agency operating with almost no outside accountability. Neither ICE agent in Maine or Texas was wearing a body camera. That's a choice this administration has made, and it's inexcusable. Gil Kurlikowski, the former U.S. Border Patrol commissioner, told NPR that ICE's street tactics are so far outside standard law enforcement practice that it shocks the conscience, describing agents boxing in vehicles and standing in front of them using tactics that are reserved elsewhere for felony stops, not routine civil enforcement. ICE agents are clearly not trained or equipped for encounters they're creating in our streets. A person's immigration status, whether they hold a visa, a work permit, or nothing at all, does not give the federal government an open license to take their life. That should not need to be said. After these 2 most recent killings, Homeland Security briefly paused most ICE traffic stops. It lasted only a day. The president himself countermanded it, calling traffic stops one of ICE's most important and effective tools. The tactic that killed 2 men is already back, not because of an investigation clearing it, but because the president said it was coming back. And he had the audacity to praise ICE for these traffic stops, emphasizing what he has made painfully clear is that he wants to eliminate people who are here one way or the other. It really doesn't matter if he kills them or he puts them on a plane out of this country. As long as they're gone, he apparently is happy with that. Montgomery County joins the many advocates demanding accountability, everyone responsible, the agents who fired, the agency that sent them out untrained and uncovered, and the administration now pushing to resume the practice that killed them has to be held accountable. We need independent investigations into both shootings conducted by agencies with no chain of command in ICE. Accountability that stops at misleading press releases is not accountability. To our immigrant residents, we want you to know that we have tools and services to help navigate these difficult and troubling times. The Gilchrist Immigration Resources Center, that's the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center, can connect you to services, including Know Your Rights presentations and legal screenings. Our ICE reporting portal is also active. It exists because ICE needs to know that the American people are watching, documenting, and building a record, one that will be used to hold accountable anyone who tramples on the Constitution, guts due process, and takes lives while they're doing it. To the families of Juan Sebastian and Lorenzo, and to everyone grieving alongside them, we see you and we grieve with you, and we also will not stop demanding the justice that you deserve. Closer to home, property tax bills have been arriving in mailboxes across the county, and we're certainly seeing a lot of reaction across social media, even in emails my office gets. Many homeowners are surprised to see a large increase in their bills due to the elimination of a $692 property tax credit that most homeowners qualified for. I want to point out that the county council claimed this was not a tax increase. Eliminating a tax credit that results in higher taxes is a tax increase. This credit, known as the income tax offset credit, was zeroed out by the county council as part of the budget process. To be clear, to anyone who might say that I'm being hypocritical by raising this issue, I did indeed propose to raise a property tax when I submitted my proposed budget. My proposal would have impacted all properties fairly and equitably. By rejecting my proposal and eliminating the largest property tax credit from most people to qualify for, the council's chosen revenue approach shifted a greater burden of our budget onto homeowners and left many commercial property tax left all commercial property taxes untouched. The other thing I want to make clear is my proposal was actually progressive. If you had a $300,000 house and you got a 6% increase, it's $180. If you had a $10 million house, it was a lot bigger tax increase. This tax increase was imposed at $692 on every homeowner. And so whether you're a billionaire or whether you're struggling and to make the mortgage on a $300,000 mortgage, you got the same increase. We had another way of doing this. The council chose this way. By eliminating the $692 credit that more than 201,000 households in our county used, the council essentially raised your property taxes by a flat $692. Under the council plan, 88% of homeowners are paying more than they would have under my proposal. Sadly, the path the council put us on will eventually lead to permanent service cuts. It has to, because there's no other way for this to evolve. By reducing income taxes on all taxpayers earning $600,000 and less, the council created a hole in the budget, a reduction of anticipated tax revenues that we would have gotten in the coming year of over $100 million, and that's going to be gifted to my successor to address. That means the next county executive is going to have a $100 million plus hole in the budget before they even start. Doesn't include inflation adjustments and shifts from the state or from the federal government to county responsibility. So this is going to be an even more difficult budget than the one I had to deal with. Given that there appears to be no let up from the damage inflicted on the local economy by Trump, we do not anticipate an increase in revenues sufficient to fill that gap and to address the effects of inflation. When recurring revenues disappear, you're left with only one choice: reduce services. To balance this year's budget, the council cut 20% from my recommended increase for MCPS. That will hurt our schools, and this budget approach will ultimately hurt the people who rely on us most for social services. It's certainly going to affect the students in the schools, since this was service-oriented cuts as well. Given our fiscal situation, a property tax increase was the only way to maintain services, adequately fund bonds for construction of schools and infrastructure, and to address growing needs at a time when the feds and state are shifting more costs to the county. Schools got cut, economic development funds got cut, which I find incredibly ironic because with everybody talking about the need to grow the tax base, this is one of the ways we grow the tax base. And some social services were cut. Unfortunately, this did not have to be our only choice. Just for perspective, I want to point out that residential tax rates in Frederick, Howard, and Prince George's County and Fairfax counties are all higher than ours. Our tax rate is $1.04. You can see the rates for everybody else around us. Frederick at $1.11, Fairfax County at $1.15.6 and $1.28 on commercial property. Howard County at $1.33 and Prince George's County at $1.37. Reston, Virginia is at $1.22, and DC government is the only one that's lower than us, and they're at 85 cents. Excuse me while I clear my throat. I'm having a bit of difficulty here. Hold on. Excuse me for that. And in Fairfax County, special taxing districts like in Tysons and Reston have commercial tax rates that approach $1.50. DC has lower residential taxes because their commercial property taxes range from $1.66 for property assessed at $5 million to $1.89 for property that's worth over $10 million. And in Fairfax County, special taxing districts, like I said, in Tysons and Reston, bring their taxes to $1.50 on commercial property. Nothing like that happens in Montgomery County. We don't have those taxes. On top of that, Fairfax County has a business licensing tax that brings in $200 million to the county every year. And I had $200 million last year from a licensing tax. There would have been no tax increases at all. No Maryland county has similar authority. I have been pushing the county council to support state legislation to create differential tax rates for commercial and residential property, like they do in Virginia and like they do in DC. But the councils refuse to support the legislation year after year, including refusing to even discuss it. That decision means that commercial and residential properties pay the same rate, and that's not fair. And when we raise residential rates, 80% of every penny actually comes from residential property, and only 20% comes from commercial property. So raising taxes this way guarantees that we raise a lot more money from residential property than from commercial property. I say this because we could have restored ways to create a fairer tax system, adopted the path that DC and Fairfax have taken, and put less burden on our taxpayers. As a council member, which I will be next year, I am going to push again to create a fair tax system that is more aligned with what our economic competitors do. County council policies of reducing taxes on the private sector developers have been nothing less than a race to the bottom. And instead of bringing us jobs or housing because we're a cheap date, it's left us without both jobs and revenue. Absent a major rethink in how we raise revenues, this next budget is going to see the same problems of last year, even magnified further. Homeowners are feeling that pinch and hurt. I want to share some information that maybe could help ease the pain, not so much the burden. The phase-in that you see is spread over any assessment increase evenly over 3 years. So you're not hit all at once. So if you had a 30% increase in your assessment, you don't get a 30% each year for the next 3 years. You get 10% first year, goes up to 20 the second year, and 30 in the third year. The homestead tax credit caps how much your taxable assessment can rise each year, 10% in Maryland. Though it's worth checking if your specific rate is lower. Just know this credit resets when you sell a home, which is part of why new buyers often see a bigger jump when they buy a new house. If they paid more than the assessed value, it's very likely that their taxes will reflect closer to what they paid than what the previous assessed value was. And the homeowner's property tax credit offers real relief based on your income versus your tax bill. But you have to apply every year by September 1st. Now, if you think your assessment doesn't match your home's actual value, you have the right to appeal within 45 days of the notice of assessment, which is printed on your form sent by the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation. You can also request a property worksheet from the assessment office to see exactly how they got their number. None of this makes the number on the bill look any better, but I wanted you to understand the full picture and to have the tools to push back if something looks like it's off to you. More interesting and not such good news. We are now in the middle of the second heat wave of the summer, and this is another one of these extraordinary heat waves. We've had a few days of typical July weather before the heat returned. We're expecting heat index values which is what it actually feels like when you factor in humidity, are expected to reach over 106 degrees over this stretch of hot weather, which could extend into the weekend or beyond. It's not just uncomfortable, it can be life-threatening, and it can happen fast. So I want to just point out some things that everybody can do, and I think it's important to understand this stuff. Stay inside as much as you can during the hottest part of the day. If you don't have air conditioning at home, find somewhere that does, particularly if your house is heating up. Like your nearby library, community rec center, or shopping mall. A fan helps, but when it gets this hot, it's not enough by itself to protect you. Take a cool shower and head somewhere with air conditioning. Also, drink water, not alcohol or soda. Water. By the time you're thirsty, you're already behind. Check on your neighbors, particularly your elderly neighbors or anybody you know with a disability, or anybody you know who doesn't have reliable air conditioning or air conditioning at all. A phone call or knock on the door can genuinely save someone's life during a heat wave like this one. Also, never leave a child or pet in a parked car, not for a minute. Temperatures inside a vehicle can very rapidly go to 130 degrees. And if someone shows signs of a heat stroke, confusion, hot red skin, body temperature over 103, loss of consciousness, that's a medical emergency. Call 911 immediately. For outdoor workers in construction or landscaping, you have a right to water, shade, and rest under Maryland law. When the heat index hits 100 degrees, employers are required to give you a 15-minute period of rest every hour. Know your rights and exercise them. Do not abuse your body because the boss would like you to do that. I hope you encourage more people to sign up for Alert Montgomery for emergency updates sent to their phones. Now, on a more celebratory note, by Sunday, hope the heat is out of here so more people can enjoy a special event that's being hosted by our Department of Recreation. The Cup Fans Unite Final Watch Party will take place on Sunday, July 19th in Wheaton. And from 1 to 2:30 p.m. that day, our younger soccer fans will be able to test their soccer skills with drills and soccer-themed activities in the parking lot behind 2425 Reedy Drive. We've laid grass down to help everyone enjoy the game once it starts at 3 p.m. Fans can bring their own chairs or blankets to enjoy the final match on 2 giant screens. The area will be open until the final whistle blows, attendance is free, and food and drinks will be available for purchase. Watching in community creates an unmistakable energy, so bring the family and join us as we celebrate our country's passion for soccer or football, if you prefer. More details about the event are available at mocorec.com. And before we open it up to questions, I'd like to give my staff an opportunity to provide any updates they want to share. And I'll start with my health team.
Good afternoon, Ms. County Executive. First and foremost, let me thank you for always highlighting the work that we do in the Department of Health and Human Services. That has been one of your constant responses to community needs, especially around behavioral health challenges. Thank you, Monica Martin. Now, I know Camera and Sarah have left, and I will thank them separately, but this is just, this illustrates the work that we do in the community and how we have young ambassadors who are the next cadre of mental health professionals in the community, and we're proud to have them work with and along with the Department of Health and Human Services. So thank you for highlighting that this afternoon. I'll turn it over to Dr. Ashford now for public health, but I wanted to echo that while we have this press conference this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Bridgers. And I just want to reiterate the county executive's remarks about our second heat wave. The only thing I would add is please, if you have elderly individuals in your life, neighbors, family members, others, please check in on them, make sure that they have a place to stay cool, that their air conditioners are working. And if their air conditioners are not working, please connect with the necessary resources or supports to get them somewhere cool or help them get back up and operational. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashford. Dr. Stoddard, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly, I want to acknowledge yesterday that the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce held their first annual Public Safety Awards. And this is in large part based on the recognition that they've seen of the efforts of the Montgomery County Police Department and Montgomery County Fire Service to improve public safety in the Silver Spring area. They're seeing really significant reductions in crime overall, but also violent crime, gun crimes, theft from auto. All the major categories are seeing reductions. And really, this is the first year where we're seeing not just reductions from where we were at during COVID, but reductions where we were at pre-COVID. And so that's a really substantial improvement. And it's also reflected in what you see across the county. And I want to take a moment to, it starts with our first responders on the ground, but I also want to acknowledge the partnership that really happened across the county government under the leadership of the county executive to address late night safety inspections, late night safety plans, increased security, and increased focus on getting our unhoused individuals off the streets and into shelters that are safe. Getting people use of technology, our DFR program, our LPR program, our camera programs have all made substantial improvements in addressing having our residents feel safe, not just in Silver Spring, but we're really seeing these reductions across just about the entire county. And we're going to redouble our efforts in places who aren't seeing quite the same reductions that we've seen in other places. And so this isn't a mission accomplished announcement, but certainly we're finally seeing progress beyond what we saw in recent years and beyond the increases we saw in the pandemic. And I really want to appreciate that it's being felt by our business community and others. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, members of the media, we can open it up right now for general questions for the county executive and other officials. Please raise your hands if you have any questions. Jeannie Bixby, Bethesda, no, the banner.
The banner.
Automatic pilot. Go ahead, Jenny.
I've been around. Seen some things. Thank you, Lorna. Hi, County Executive Elrich. Could you speak to the extent that you are able to about, we're hearing reports that an appeal was filed with the Office of Zoning Administration by Atmosphere, the Dickerson data center developer, against they want to appeal your moratorium. Could you speak to that?
Well, it's a legal thing, so I'm not going to say too much about it. They obviously would like to appeal the moratorium, and they'd like to proceed as quickly as they can. And, my concerns were shared, I think, by everyone on the council and a whole bunch of people in the community. We have never had to deal with these mega data centers. And so nothing in our code deals with the kind of issues that these centers are raising. And they apparently would be perfectly happy to go forward under rules that had not contemplated this kind of building. And we just don't think it's wise to do that. It is not an effort to block a data center, but it's an effort to make sure that if we're going to do these, we do these right. I happen to believe it is possible to do them right. These are not unknown topics, and there are known solutions. And in most cases, it depends on whether the data center provider is willing to do the things that are pretty well demonstrated that are capable of addressing the problems that the data centers can bring. So they would just be patient, let the council work through legislation, and then we'll go about the process of figuring out, can we get to an agreement on what makes the data center safe and not a threat to our community? But it can be done, but that requires two parties willing to work at it.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeannie. Jacqueline Quijano, Univision DC. Go ahead, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Lorna. I have a question in Spanish for Luisa Cardona. Luisa, hay mucha gente traumatizada por lo que pasó en Maine y en Houston. ¿Existe ayuda para las familias inmigrantes locales, ya sea en centros de crisis u otros lados?
Absolutamente. Y Mónica, que está acá, que también puede responder a esta pregunta en español, puede proveer más información sobre los servicios de salud mental que tenemos para no solo nuestras familias inmigrantes, pero para todas nuestras familias, sin importar el idioma que hable. Y sí, es algo muy traumatizante. Mónica.
No, definitivamente el centro de crisis que está disponible 24 horas al día al 240-777-4000 o sin llamar y sin cita pueden llegar al 1301 Picard Drive en Rockville. Tenemos ahí terapistas hispanohablantes y tenemos también otros profesionales de salud mental que pueden ayudar en cualquier momento. Y tal vez lo más importante es que tenemos equipos móviles que pueden llegar en cualquier local, en la comunidad, para asistir con cualquier crisis, cualquier crisis. Y siempre decimos que nosotros no somos en el condado, nosotros no definimos cuál es la crisis que una persona está teniendo en cualquier momento. Estamos ahí para apoyar nuestra entera comunidad en cualquier momento y estos equipos están disponibles para, de nuevo, visitar a alguien en la comunidad, en su lugar de empleo, en su casa, como sea, en una iglesia, si se sienten más tranquilos, tal vez reuniéndose con alguien en su comunidad de fe para recibir ese apoyo.
Y también si las familias se sienten inseguros porque no quieren guía legal de migración o quieren entender más sus derechos y las posibilidades, las opciones que tiene su familia, si no sabe por su estatus legal, como dijo el ejecutivo, pueden llamar al Gilchrist Center para poder conectarse con los servicios que necesitan.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up, Jacqueline?
No, gracias. De hecho, el mensaje que iba a preguntar es que si ellos pueden dar un mensaje a la comunidad inmigrante para que se acerquen, no tengan miedo de que ustedes están para ayudarle.
Sí, como dijo el ejecutivo Marc Elrich, nosotros estamos sintiendo el dolor que siente nuestra comunidad y estamos también demandando justicia y que se tome responsabilidad por estos actos, de que estos agentes y el gobierno federal tome responsabilidad y cambie sus actos. Pero sepan que aquí estamos para nuestra comunidad en este condado. No nos importa el estatus migratorio, usted es nuestro vecino y estamos aquí para apoyarlos.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you. Alexandria Barnes, you're up next. Montgomery Community Media, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning,
Morning.
or actually good afternoon. It's noon now. This is for the county exec. You said regarding the tax hike, you said that this leads to permanent service cuts. Do you know when residents may feel those permanent service cuts or which services may get cut?
So I could get my staff to get you a list, but I can tell you the cuts to the schools are going to be in place when these kids go back to school. And they lost people who actually worked with students, not just administrators who never see a student. The school system did make cuts in that area, but they cut positions where people had to serve students. It is very difficult in the school system where 90% of their budget is people, and most of the people are in classrooms or doing support the classrooms, that when you don't have enough money to start cutting people who are actually serve our students. It also affects the capital budget. The school system, came to us with, I will say it's an extraordinary ask of more than $2 billion. They didn't expect it in 1 year. But just to make it clear for everybody, the $2 billion is an accumulated deficit in non-spending on maintenance in our schools, because for the previous 20 years, almost all the money that the county had in tax revenue that was available for construction was focused on building capacity in our schools, because that was our biggest problem. So the repairs in schools got pushed to the side in order to make sure they had seats in schools for all the children that were coming here. The result of that is about a 20 years worth of deferred maintenance, and that bill is now coming due. The school system pointed out to us that there are schools where the air conditioners are pretty sure to fail. When they fail, the schools are going to wind up getting closed. That is not going to be a good thing. We don't have places we don't have holding schools to send these children to. So we've got problems coming down the road, and we have to deal with them. So, no one likes to raise taxes, but what I like less than raising taxes is diminishing services, making it harder to educate children, and making it harder for people in many other ways to stay in this county. So, we've got some issues we're going to have to deal with. And the council, which I'll be part of next year, is going to have to figure out how we're going to wrestle with the needs of this county versus the problems we have with our tax base. And I would say it again, if we did what Virginia and DC did, we would not have to be in this mess. This is a self-inflicted wound by people who are too concerned about what developers think and not concerned enough about what residents think, to be blunt.
I appreciate the bluntness. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. Ginny, your hand's up. Do you have a follow-up question?
I do not. Sorry about that.
Okay. All right. No worries. Any other questions for the county executive and officials this afternoon? No more questions? Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.